Hello everybody and welcome back on my channel. Today I have a very special guest who will share his story and its work with all of us, and I am very pleased to welcome Noah Maizels from Wanchain. In case you don't know, Noah is the Director of Communication at Wanchain. Noah, thanks for accepting my invitation.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Noah, can you please tell us more about yourself? My audience will really love to hear your story.
Sure. So I am originally from the US. I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. in Maryland. And since graduating university, I spent pretty much my entire professional career in China. So that would be like the last 7 years in China. I finished, let's see. So I did my master's in teaching, and then I went out to China where I started out as a teacher. And then, that wasn't really something that I found after doing it for a while. I didn't really enjoy it all that much. But I did enjoy living in China. I loved learning the language. But I just started looking for other opportunities. And I'd always been interested in technology. And for a while I was considering doing something, getting into software development. And then around, I guess it was 2016 or 2017, I'd already been using cryptocurrency for a while at that point. And what I used it for is, I don't know, you probably aren't aware, but China has very strict capital control policies. So that means like policies to prevent money from leaving the country, because they don't. I mean, they don't want all the rich people there to take their money and go somewhere else. They want them to keep it in the country, keep it invested in the Chinese economy. So they put strict limits on how much individuals are allowed to transfer out of the country. And they also put limits not only on Chinese citizens, but also on foreigners. And not only are there limits, but even if you want to send money within your limit, it's a very annoying and complicated procedure. So like I need to go to the bank, I need to get documents showing my salary, showing I paid taxes on it. Maybe I need my contract. Maybe I need to get like, my residence permit. I need to get the deed to the house from the place I'm renting. Just like a crazy list of documents that are annoying to get, sometimes even impossible to get. And in case you're not able to get one of those documents, basically your money would be trapped in China. And so, I would have been able to transfer money out the normal way, but just because it's such a hassle, I was looking for other ways. And I'd actually been aware of Bitcoin for quite a while already. Now I just said this was 2016 or 2017, but actually we need to back up a little further. This was actually in 2013 and 14, which is when I first tried using Bitcoin to move my salary back from China to the US. I'd been aware of Bitcoin before that. I actually was aware of Bitcoin like in the early 2010s, but it was never something I thought of as an investment at that time, very unfortunately for me. But I thought it was something very interesting. I followed it. I read this blog. It's called Boing Boing. It's a pretty popular blog about technology and also culture, and they cover a lot of things related to not only cryptocurrency but like cryptography and alternative economic systems. So if I remember correctly, that's what I think it might have been Boing Boing where I first heard about Bitcoin, but that might not be right. But anyway, so 2013, 2014, might have even been as early as 2012. I was just using Bitcoin to transfer money back home because it's easier than other options.
Only to transfer, not to hold a little bit.
Not to hold it. I didn't at that time. I didn't see it as an investment, and I mean it was very risky. You know, nobody really knew what it was or what it would be or what it could be at that time. There were a few strong core believers, and I was not at that time. I wasn't yet a believer, and I didn't really understand how Bitcoin worked at that time. I didn't understand, what's consensus. I didn't understand how mining works. All I really understood is that, oh, it's this kind of digital currency which lets you move money and transfer money. And I didn't really understand anything that went into it at that point. I just thought it's cool. It's not controlled by any. I understood it wasn't controlled by any government. And I mean, at a technical level, not only the technology, but just the concept of a monetary supply that's totally independent of any centralized party controlling it. Even if I didn't understand the technology behind it, I did understand that concept, and I thought that was very cool. And so yeah, I was using it to move money back to the U.S. And actually, around that time, I don't remember if it was 2013 or 2014. There was a rapid rise in the price of Bitcoin up to about $1,000. So I had been buying it at about several $100s a Bitcoin. And when there was that rapid rise, I then that was the first time I started thinking about it as potentially as an investment. I never thought it would go that high, up to 1,000. I was really surprised, and I bought more. And if you know what happened after, it crashed back down, and it stayed
from
down.
1,000, he goes from 1,000 to 200, right?
Something like that. Yeah, it went down a lot, and it fell a lot, and it was down for a very long time. The next few years, it never got back up to 1,000. And at that point, I kind of stopped paying close attention to it, and I felt kind of annoyed at myself. I put my money into this, very risky investment. What seemed at that time like a very risky investment, and I lost, the majority of the value I put in. And a few years later, I just was like, okay, I'm just going to sell this and at least try to recover some of my funds. I mean, I didn't have all. I think I had like a couple of Bitcoin, not a whole lot. Could have been worth a lot. Anyway, so I sold it, and I kind of didn't pay attention to it for a while. Then I think, like I said, I think it was might have been 2016 or 2017, probably 2016, I guess. I don't know exactly. Kind of on a whim, I logged into my Coinbase account, and I saw there's this new thing called Ethereum. And I was like, well, what's that? I knew about Bitcoin, and I never heard of Ethereum. And I started looking it up, and then I read about the concept of smart contracts and the concept of decentralized computation. And then that kind of blew my mind a little bit. And I started, thinking about what are the possibilities of a decentralized computation system that, no one can control. You can write the program, and it'll just run, and nobody can interfere with it. And it can enable, really unstoppable financial applications, but without any, centralized intermediary that can prevent anything from happening. And not only financial applications, but just, anything really. So I just thought it was super cool. And at that time, Ethereum was like $15, and I was like, okay, I got to get me some of this. And then the next time I checked, it was like at $30, and I was like, oh, I better act quickly. And I just started buying it and trading it from there. And after I found out about Ethereum, I started reading that's when I started reading more about the technology behind both Ethereum and Bitcoin, learning about consensus mechanisms, learning about how smart contracts actually work. What's a 51% attack? How does mining exactly work? All of that. That was also when like Ethereum was rising. Bitcoin had just gone up to like $3,000 for the first time around then. I never thought it would go up higher, but it did. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of what really drew me in and got me really to start investigating the technology more deeply and also looking at it as an investment more deeply. And so at that time, I was living in Shanghai. I was actually between jobs at that time. I told you I'd been teaching for a while, and
Yes.
then I didn't really like it. And I also told you I was interested in technology. So, for those few years, I'd been learning programming. I was learning Python and like computer science. I was taking online computer science classes. And at the end of my fourth year, at my fourth year in China, I had found a administration position in a school. I was like the middle school administrator and also the IT teacher. So I was teaching programming classes to middle school students, and I was also being a school administrator, sort of like a bit of a management position in a way, but not really like that high up. Just taking care of a lot of little details around the school. So that was kind of like the last straw. I was like, okay, I've tried different teaching roles. I've tried administration. I've tried teaching technology, which is what I'm interested in. I still don't like it. And I thought, I need to make a plan for what I'm going to do next. And so now this was before everything I talked about with getting interested in Ethereum. And I was looking for ways to get into the tech industry at that time. And I was looking into like computer science degrees back in the US and also around the world. And I wasn't really sure exactly what kind of degree I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to get involved in tech, and I wanted to do something with programming if possible. So I found out that it was possible for me to go to school in Germany for a very, much cheaper than in the US. So in Germany, like the semester fees were under $1,000. In the US, it would have been like $20,000. So I thought, and that's not even the most expensive place I could have chosen for 20,000. It could have been considerably more. I didn't have residency in the US at that time. If I had, maybe I could get a lower local tuition, but I didn't have that. So I applied to schools in Germany, and I got into an information engineering degree in Hamburg, Germany. And I went to Germany. And it was the Hamburg University of Applied Sciences, and it's known by the abbreviation HAW. And they have classes both in German and in English for international students.
So how was the life in Germany?
Well, the degree I was doing was information engineering, which is a bit like a combination of computer science and electrical engineering. So, I had computer science classes, I had electrical engineering, I had calculus, and I also had, there's one other class, I can't remember. Anyway, I had one other class. So I had not really touched high-level math in a very long time. I had been learning programming, so actually the programming classes were the easiest for me. They were very easy for me. But the electrical and actually even the math classes weren't too bad. The calculus classes were okay. But the electrical and engineering, that really killed me. So I had to spend literally all my time studying just to keep up. So I actually didn't really get to experience all that much of life in Germany. I actually only ended up doing a semester there. I didn't finish the entire year. What happened was I realized I really like programming, and I really like, building software and writing programs. I don't really like the very high level math. I don't really like, I have no interest in electrical engineering, really. So I realized it wasn't really the right degree for me. Even if I were to get another degree, which in the end I decided I don't need or want another degree. But even if I did want another one, it wasn't the right one for me. If I was going to get another degree, it should have just been computer science, not information engineering. So a few months in, I just realized, like, I don't want to keep doing this. I don't like electrical engineering. I'm not really interested in this high level math. And I quit before the end of that semester. So I think I'd been there for about 3 months in Hamburg. And my thought at the time when I quit is I'll just continue teaching myself programming, teaching myself web development, because I was interested in programming. I wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to do, but after researching it for a while, I kind of figured out web development is the easiest area of programming to get into as a self-taught student. So my thoughts were, I'll go back to China. I'll continue working non-programming jobs. And like I originally wanted to find find a marketing job when I got back to China. And keep working those jobs and continue learning programming and web development while I'm doing that, and then eventually transition into being a programmer, into being a web developer. When I got back to China, I actually found I couldn't find a good marketing job. I don't know, you're probably not familiar with the Chinese, you're definitely not familiar with the Chinese job market for foreigners. But basically, teachers for international schools in China get paid very, very well. And, of course, they don't have to compete with, local Chinese teachers because, we're teaching in our native language. And they're international schools, so they're teaching according to usually either American or European standards, not Chinese standards. So teachers who have American credentials or European credentials are very high in demand and can command very high salaries. So even though it's not what I wanted to do, because I couldn't find a marketing job that would pay even half as much as going back to teaching, I just found another teaching job and continued learning web development and teaching myself more programming. And it was actually at that time when I was looking for that next job, that's when everything I was describing earlier with getting into Ethereum happened. So I actually arrived back in China during the beginning of the spring semester of school. And for international school jobs, they don't start generally in the middle of the year. They start at the beginning of the semester, usually in fall. So I'd found my job already in the spring semester, and I'd already signed the contract, and I was just kind of waiting for it to start. I basically had a few months off to do whatever I wanted. It was during those few months off, after I'd been hired, but before I started working, that's when I found out about Ethereum and started, researching it and really getting into it more. And then, investing in ICOs and making a bit of money.
Yeah, tell us the first ICO that you invest in.
I didn't actually invest directly in very many ICOs at all. Most of them I bought on the market after they listed.
Okay.
The first ICO I invested in, I think I lost everything I invested in it because I didn't understand that you couldn't use a exchange address to receive ICO funds.
Ooh.
I think it was, let me see if it was some kind of ICO aimed at like banking the unbanked. You know, that was a big phrase that was very popular early in Ethereum's development. The idea that there's this massive group of people around the world who aren't being served by the modern banking industry. And so maybe they don't have proper identification, or for whatever reason, there's no good banking solution for those communities. So that was a very big focus of, early on in Ethereum's development. And this project, I actually just looked it up. It's called Human IQ, or I don't know if maybe it's pronounced Humanique. I'm not exactly certain. But basically, their focus at that time, they were focused on banking the unbanked. And I just went to their website now, and it looks like they've pivoted, and now it's a charity and fundraising platform. I'm guessing what they figured out is it's actually very difficult to bank the unbanked.
Yeah.
And for people who are unbanked, actually a cryptocurrency bank-based solution is probably just as difficult as a traditional solution. There's almost as many barriers to trying to bank the unbanked with a cryptocurrency solution as with a traditional solution. I'm sure that's wrong in some instances, and in some instances it is possible. But just from what I have seen personally, there's still tons of barriers to banking the unbanked with cryptocurrency-based solutions. So yeah, that was my first actual ICO that I subscribed to directly and didn't buy on the secondary market. And I put my Coinbase address as the place to receive the tokens. And so Coinbase has my Humanique or Human IQ tokens sitting in one of their addresses.
At the time you have using only Coinbase?
At that time, I only used Coinbase. Yeah, I wasn't really very aware of other exchanges at that time. I was aware of Bittrex. I think Bittrex was the second. I wasn't really aware of Poloniex at that time. Bittrex was the second exchange I signed up for, and I'm guessing probably Binance was the third one I ever used after that. And
after Binance come that take all the market.
Right.
Because the fee was so low, and the Bittrex, I remember, was taking 0.1%, and Binance was a half or a little bit lower. So
yeah, I never used Bittrex all that much. I think I got on there because I wanted to buy XRP. But anyway, yeah. So like I said, Humanique was the first ICO I participated in, and I started researching ICOs, researching different tokens. I started going to live meetups in Shanghai, where I was living at the time, for other people who were interested in cryptocurrency. I joined a lot of local WeChat groups on crypto. WeChat is the #1 social app in China. So I was joining a lot of WeChat groups that were dedicated to cryptocurrency discussion and to discussing ICOs. And I met a bunch of people, and they introduced me to a lot of different cryptocurrency tools and concepts. And I just thought it was all super interesting. I was making money by investing, and I got, I would say, obsessed with it. I would just spend all my free time reading about blockchain, reading about cryptocurrency, researching ICOs, constantly checking my blockfolio. Is it up, is it down? Trading all the time. I had way too many different ICOs, way too many different tokens, most of which were total crap. But at the time, I wasn't skeptical. I would say I was not skeptical enough of people's marketing claims at the time, and I've gotten much wiser now. But at the time, it was all very, very exciting, and I was super into it, and really, like I said, like basically obsessed. And like I said, I didn't want to stay in teaching anymore. And by being in these communities, I started to see that a lot of these cryptocurrency companies in China, because I did still want to stay in China at that time. A lot of the cryptocurrency companies in China were looking for native English speakers to help them with marketing and community management, because of course it's not easy to do that for an international community if you're not a native speaker. So I began to pursue that as what I wanted to do next. Like I wanted to get a marketing or community management role in a cryptocurrency company in China. And that was, I would say, a few months into the beginning of that teaching job I just got. And over the next few months, I just, continued researching ICOs, continued going to meetups, networked like crazy, got to meet, pretty much everyone in the Shanghai cryptocurrency scene. I got to know Professor Nicholas Krapels, or Professor K, as we call him. And eventually I was introduced to Wanchain through Professor K. And that's how I first found out about Wanchain and got in touch with them. I think he introduced me to Lizzie, who's no longer at Wanchain. But yeah, so that's how I got in touch with them. And, I was aware of Wanchain at the time, and I had heard about the Interoperability Alliance with Wanchain, Icon, and Ion. And, I thought interoperability, cross-chain transfers was going to be super big in the future. And, Wanchain was one of the early projects to focus on doing that. I had actually already applied to a few other cryptocurrency companies, and I gotten some offers. One of them was an investment company. But, I wasn't really I never was all that interested in the investment or finance side of cryptocurrency. I was always more interested in the technology. That also kind of goes along with my interest in programming and technology in general. So Wanchain just appealed to me so much more because they're very much a technology-focused organization. They're really trying to build original and innovative technology. So I went through the process, and eventually I was hired to work at Wanchain. And for that position, I moved from Shanghai to Beijing. Let me check what year that was. I just pulled up my LinkedIn, so I have my history of everything. I'm not very good with dates, so I always, So it was July 2018. Actually, almost exactly 2 years ago that I moved to Beijing to join Wanchain. I didn't mention it, but actually I also did a little bit of work for this local blockchain company in Shanghai called MDL, which was focused on being a platform for models and creatives. But I don't think it ever really got off the ground. I just did a little bit of editing and translation for them. But yeah, so I just got to Beijing. And after 5.5 years in Shanghai, I'd visited quite a few other cities around China, but I'd only ever lived in Shanghai. And Shanghai and Beijing, they're both massive international modern cities. So in some ways they're very similar, but I was still leaving behind everyone I knew in Shanghai to basically start an entirely new life and career in Beijing. So let's see, this was 2018, summer of 2018. This was close to the top of the bubble, the ICO bubble. And very shortly after joining, Um, we were sent to the World Blockchain Conference, Wuhan. I think that's it. Yeah, so that's right. So Wuhan is a city in I guess eastern China. I think it's close. It's not too far from Shanghai, and it's a big kind of they have a lot of tech conferences there, and there's like a lot of investment and technology in that city. So that's where they had the World Blockchain Conference. And so this was like my first few weeks at Wanchain. I still didn't know a whole lot about, I knew what anyone could find out about Wanchain publicly. I'd read the white papers, I'd read the business papers, I read all the blog, I read basically everything. So I knew everything that was public at that time, but I still didn't really know, how the company works, how the industry works, what was expected of me and my position. I was kind of, everything was kind of new to me. And my first experience, one of the things I did for the first few weeks was just being flown out, or I guess we took a train, I think, out to Wuhan, and then being a representative of Wanchain at this conference. So it was really just throwing me straight into the fire.
Wow.
And I was a bit nervous, but it actually went really well. It was me and Ed who were there, and we were the native English speakers representing the company. I mean, Wanchain, of course, does have other, a lot of the Chinese staff at Wanchain speak excellent English, of course. But it's just, it's, especially when you're doing business development or talking about something very detailed, it's just a lot easier to do it if you're both communicating in your native language. So it was, that was basically what we were there for at the conference, to just, make contacts, network, find people to make potential partnerships with. And I guess at that point, also just to kind of learn more about what it's like working at Wanchain. So we got back from the conference, and after that, it was just kind of, work as normal, which, it was a new normal for me. So there was kind of a long period of figuring out, what exactly would my role at Wanchain be? So of course, it's a marketing role, but that could be, many different things. So in the beginning, I started with quite a bit of translation. So translating Chinese to English, and also proofreading, a lot of proofreading. There's a ton of English documentation and English articles, but a lot of them were just not that easy to follow because they weren't written by a native English speaker. And then there was also a lot of stuff that was just written in Chinese, and so of course impossible to follow for non-Chinese speakers. So I spent a lot of time translating, and at the same time I was just kind of learning more about Wanchain and about how things worked at the company. And then I also began writing content, blog articles, tweets, and I got involved a little bit in business development at that time as well. At that time in mid 2018, it was still the ICO boom, and we were working on trying to get projects to launch their ICO on Wanchain, which turned out to be quite a struggle because all the projects just wanted Wanchain to give them a lot of money to launch on Wanchain. And of course, we were willing to do some sort of investment, but only, there's only so much we can do of that, and in a responsible way. And we also wanted, we wanted projects that wanted to build on us because they agreed, they appreciated our technology and agreed with our vision, not just because we're paying them. We want somebody who's really going to be a honest and enthusiastic member of the community and dedicated to building the ecosystem with us. So that's kind of why we didn't really see any. We did have a few, like there was MedX and there was another one, Curve, but none of them really, for the long term, none of them really developed into anything on Wanchain. But yeah, so a lot of my initial efforts at that time were reaching out to potential ICOs to launch on Wanchain. That was a big part of what I was doing. And then writing content and translation. And I think at that time, I still hadn't gotten all that involved in community management yet. I pop my head into the chat every once in a while, but I wasn't really making my presence felt in the community at that time. I was mostly just focusing on what I could do internally at the company. So then it's mid 2018, a few months passed by, and we all know what happened a few months later, right? There was, Bitcoin went up to like, what was it? Like almost, what was it at the top? Do you remember?
At the top, Bitcoin was around, Bitcoin or Wanchain?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin was around 20K.
20. Did it pass over 20? I don't remember. I think it was just at 20.
Depends on the exchange, but I remember 20K was
basically just hit about 20, and that's when it started falling from there. Yeah. So I'm mentioning Bitcoin and not Wanchain because of course that's what shaped the market and shaped the entire economy, and the crypto economy anyway. So I as it got closer to the end of 2018, everything started crashing. Or I'm sorry, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, was the start of the 2018.
Was it the start of 2018?
Yep.
Then I think I must have the dates wrong on my LinkedIn then.
I said Bitcoin was crashing at the start of the 2018, but the ICO market was falling around February, March, something like that.
I think I'm getting my timeline a little mixed up here. Yeah, I guess. Okay, yeah. So I guess it was around that time that it had started to crash, but I don't think it had crashed so deeply yet. It had just started declining a bit.
Yeah, it was a dump, then was a pump, then was a dump, then was a pump.
So we're still in this kind of cycle of dumps and pumps, I believe. I really have to look back at the chart to know this exactly. But we weren't really in the crypto winter yet, but we were kind of falling.
We're just starting it, but nobody know it.
Right. So, it's around this time that prospects for ICOs are beginning to get, less and they're drying up. And, we're getting more and more projects coming to us, literally just asking for money. And, some of them are kind of almost on a state of failure. And, things aren't looking good for a lot of projects. And they aren't really looking good for us in terms of trying to launch ICOs on Wanchain. And then like the real crash happens. I don't remember the exact month or date, but eventually the real crash happened, and then it stayed down for quite a while. And well, personally, I lost a lot of potential gains because I don't really know a whole lot about investment, and I never really did a whole lot of investment before I started investing in ICOs and cryptocurrency. So I didn't really have a good strategy for how to invest. I took a little bit of gains, I sold a little bit of my profits, but I really kept most of it still in all my, 20 different ICO tokens or whatever, however many it was. So, my investments went down, more than 90% basically. And from hearing my story, maybe, you or maybe some of your listeners might have thought, I'm rich, I made a ton of money or something, but actually no, I would say in the end, I probably doubled about what I put in. Whereas if I had sold at the top, I would have made like 10, 20 times what I put in. But, as a new and undisciplined investor without a strategy, that's just what happens, So going forward,
Actually, it's
yeah.
very good for a newbie to make to doubling his money. It's very
Right.
good at the
Of
end.
course, in the traditional economy, it's very good, but it's also very, very upsetting to see how low down it went and how much I could have earned if I had sold it at the top. So, you know, I mean, I know a lot of people did lose a lot of money that they put in. So I feel, you know, of course, that's, you know, much worse than what happened with me. But it's still psychologically a big blow to, you know, see my portfolio that high and then see it go down that low. And yeah, so you know, I'm mentioning the economy not just because of what happened to me personally, but because this also affected what was happening at Wanchain. So at that time, we had this big marketing and BD team, and we just started seeing, you know, and at that time, like I said, they were focused on trying to attract ICOs to build on Wanchain. And you know, at that time, the dev team was focused on building our you know, our basic cross-chain technology, the bridges to Bitcoin and Ethereum, and you know, the ICOs just started drying up. There's less and less projects. There's just less for the BD team, especially, to do. So after the crash happened and after it was clear it's not going to recover anytime soon, you know, unfortunately, Wanchain had to let some of the business team go. So the team was pretty much cut in half. And it's just, you know, everything was very uncertain. Nobody really knew exactly what the next direction would be. DeFi had not really yet come out. Cross-chain technology, there wasn't a whole lot of market for it yet. I mean, DeFi is pretty much what's driving the cross-chain, you know, the need for cross-chain now.
So on this topic, Noah, for the audience, why it's so important, the interoperability of blockchains, in your opinion?
So before cross-chain communication, there's just no way to transfer value between chains without trusting somebody or some company. And there have been plenty of cases of people being cheated or hacked and losing money due to cryptocurrency being stored in centralized ways. So cross-chain communication allows for that process to happen without any trusted third parties. And when you have that process there, and when it's done programmatically, it also allows for you to build really cool cross-chain applications on top of it. So, you know, if there's a trusted third party, for example, it's very hard for you to build, you know, let's say, for example, a cross-chain lending system. So, you know, like, as you know, right, you may be aware right now, Wanchain is currently developing what we call a two-way bridge. So the two-way bridge will bring assets from Wanchain to Ethereum. So our previous bridges brought assets from other chains to Wanchain. Our two-way bridge will bring assets from other chains to Ethereum and later to other chains as well, but starting with Ethereum. So what this means is that you know, the Bitcoin could be sent from the Bitcoin, the value of the Bitcoin really could be sent from the Bitcoin blockchain to the Wanchain blockchain, then from the Wanchain blockchain to the Ethereum blockchain. And this is all done programmatically. So there's no person who is managing this process. It's all happening, you know, just through the software. So because it's happening through the software, and because these are all, you know, open and public APIs that anyone can build on top of, it means you can build whatever financial service you imagine on top of it. And you know, one of the things that we're working on now is cross-chain decentralized lending. So, you know, currently there's already decentralized lending and borrowing on a number of different chains. Of course, you know, most prominently on Ethereum with Compound. And it does allow for you to use Bitcoin there, but it's wrapped Bitcoin. And it's you know, it's WBTC, which goes through ERC20 WBTC, not to be confused with Wanchain's WRC20 BTC. So the ERC20 WBTC, it goes through, to get the Bitcoin from the Bitcoin blockchain to the Ethereum blockchain, it has to go through a trusted and centralized third party, which is something a lot of people want to avoid. So with these, with the decentralized, permissionless, trustless cross-chain bridges that Wanchain is building, you could totally get rid of that process of the trusted cross-chain transfer and build the lending protocol directly on top of Ethereum and Bitcoin. So you could, from the Bitcoin chain, or from the from the Ethereum chain, put your Ethereum up at, or let's say from Bitcoin. So from Bitcoin, you put your Bitcoin up as collateral, and then you directly get ERC20 USDT as your loan through this system. And you never need to send your Bitcoin through a trusted third party in order to use it in the lending application. The Bitcoin is it goes through Wanchain's decentralized cross-chain mechanism, and it's then accessible on the lending application on Wanchain. So it's locked up as collateral on Wanchain in the lending application. And then the lending application on Wanchain communicates through our Stormin nodes to the Ethereum blockchain, and then it directly releases the stablecoin loan, which you'd like to get, to your account on Ethereum. So you actually never need to touch anything that's happening on Wanchain. You start the loan on the Bitcoin side, and you receive it on the Ethereum side, and you never need to go through a trusted third party. You never need to worry about wrapped tokens. It's all happening behind the scenes. So that's like a really cool, cross-chain application that you could build, and it's something that we're actually working on right now.
Noah, thank you so much for sharing your story, and it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's been great to be on your show, and it's just nice to chat and talk, especially with lockdown and COVID. I haven't really had a whole lot of chances to get out and really talk to anybody outside of my family for quite a while. So it's definitely been nice, and it's been a great opportunity to share more about Wanchain and about my new role. So yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's been great.